Hello everybody, this is Dr. Farrell and we are looking at our course calendar for school finance here. And unfortunately, or fortunately I guess, it just depends, we have marked off spring break and we are now moving into week 10 of our course. So what that means is we're going to uh, enter into a completely new area, somewhat new because you will see soon it's going to be tied to school funding, and that is our bond issue project. We're going to work on this for 3 weeks. You can see that this week you have this video and you can begin working on it, and then you'll work on it during weeks 11 and 12, and I will check in with you during each of those weeks. So let me show you where this information is. If you go to project submission links, you can see I've added a new link here for school bond issues. At the end of the school funding project, I have added a wrap-up video there, and you should be able to post your links, but as I stated in the video, I'm going to give you credit for the last few questions. You'll understand that when you watch that video. In the school bond issue, it's pretty straightforward. The one thing missing here is this video that you're watching that will appear here by the time you're looking at from your screen. Here are our instructions that we're going to do, the PowerPoint I'm getting ready to show you and walk you through, and then here is where you will submit your answers, and I will explain this as we go through uh, our PowerPoint. So let us begin by looking at our PowerPoint. So you can see now that we're talking about bond issues. So when we look at the building fund in our districts, uh, each district gets 5 mills from property taxes that goes into the building fund. And you could see what this was in your districts. And this is not a significant amount of money to do any type of major construction. So the way that districts raise money is through the sale of bonds. And this video is going to walk you through the sale of bonds, how bonds work, and how they impact an individual taxpayer. If we can get it to work. There we go. So types of bonds. We have building bonds. Um, Building bonds are going to be the biggest ones, obviously, it makes sense. We have transportation bonds, and then we have equipment bonds, possibly. This is going to be for technology. The main thing we see here is that we cannot mix these things in the same uh, issue. So we cannot mix a building and a transportation bond on the same bond. That's why you always usually see two separate bonds when schools pass bond issues. You see a building bond and a transportation bond, and quite often the equipment may be mixing with the building to an extent, but generally we'll see separate bonds. Okay, so the lengths of these bonds depend on what we're doing. For example, transportation bonds are good for 5 years max, which is perfect sense. If you can do it in 3, you can do it in 3, that's good. Uh, Obviously, by 5 years, though, your school buses are going to be worn out after 5 years, and so there's no reason to go beyond 5 years paying for those school buses. And we'll talk about in a minute the idea that once you get a bond issue passed, you can sustain it and just keep renewing it every 5 years. Um, your building bonds can go up to 25 years. I wouldn't advise that. We won't necessarily get into those issues, but they could go up to 25 years. And then equipment bonds, 5 years or the effective life of the equipment. And this dealing with textbooks, computers, uniform software, licenses, etc. So a little bit more, total issues cannot be more than 10% of the total net assessed valuation of the district. So this is an important thing to remember here when we're looking at districts, and we're going to use two of our districts that we had, uh, Carrollton, which is out in western Oklahoma. I believe that was Cheyenne School District. And then Devon Crossing, which is Deer Creek. And so both of those are going to have different local tax bases. And so we'll see that the 10% of their net assessed valuation is going to be drastically different. But that's the key here, is that whatever your net valuation is, your bonding capacity, as we call it, is 10% of that net valuation. Passage of a bond requires a supermajority, or 60%, and there is absolutely no rounding up here. I was in a school district earlier this semester where it's a very small district. The last time they attempted a bond issue was 5 years ago, and it failed by one vote to reach the 60%. So it has to be 60% or greater. And then once you do that, you will create what's called a sinking fund. And within this sinking fund, you're going to collect enough revenue to pay two things: the interest on the bond, which is paid every 6 months, and the principal of the bond, which is paid at the maturity of the bond, whether it's the end of 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, or whatever. We're really not talking about different types of funds. That state aid money that we looked at, that money goes into a general fund, and that's basically what it says, is the general fund is used to operate the school. But when you're talking about sinking funds specifically, sinking funds are used specifically for bond issues to repay bonds, collect the revenue and repay bonds. And you have some other funds in there, like Child Nutrition Fund and things like that. But the main thing you're going to be dealing with if you were in a district is your general fund. But for the purposes of our bond issue, we're going to be looking at sinking funds. And we'll explain how this works in a minute as well. So how does a bond work? Well, it's pretty straightforward. So let's assume that our bond has passed. Okay. At that point, then the school board, and we're just going to do a simple one here. I think we're going to use $250,000. We're going to use a $250,000 transportation bond. At that point, once the bond passes, what happens is the school board sells the bonds to a financial institution, and so they get the money. So they sell the bond, $250,000. They get the $250,000 right up front, and they pay for those items. And so once it's passed and the sale is made, you can go out and buy your school buses. The bond issues do not have to be 100% of what they were specified for on the election, but and this is just good business practice. You want law says that 70% of the things you specified in the election campaign itself has to be done, and 85% spent on specific projects within those things. So whatever you specified in the election, you have to do 70% of that. And then individual projects within that scope, you have to spend 85% of what you budgeted for that project. And the money is distributed differently according to whatever type of project it is. Taxes are collected to pay for bonds and interest. These taxes are done through property taxes. Okay, so once you and if you've been in a district, I have a small piece of land out in southwestern Oklahoma, small rural school. My property taxes were about $260 a month, and they passed a major bond issue, and they went up to $260 a year. It's out in very rural Oklahoma, and once they passed a bond issue, they went up to about $450 a year. So that's how the money is collected, and as it's collected each year through taxes, those monies are put into the sinking fund, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So how do bonds actually work? Um, Bonds are sold in $5,000 denominations. Um, they mature at the end of their term, so that $250,000 bond issue that we're theoretically passing for this presentation is going to be sold in $5,000 increments. Okay, and they'll mature at the end of the term. I think we're going to pick 3 years here, and so in 3 years you'll get your $5,000 back, plus you're going to get interest. Okay, the interest you get is going to be paid every 6 months. Now the good thing about bonds is they're non-taxable, so that's non-taxable interest or income that you're going to get every 6 months. It's a very secure investment. The So the upside is, you're going to get a little money every 6 months, depending on how many bonds you buy in $5,000 denominations. The downside is interest is pretty low, so you're not going to get that much right now. But it's a great investment if you had the money to invest in it. So bonds go back to the idea of mills, and we talked about mills when we were dealing with the state funding formula. Okay, we know that a mill is 1/10 of a penny, or 1/1000th of a dollar. It's equal to 0.001. Now back in the 30s and the 40s, they actually had mills. So here are some pictures of mills from Oklahoma. As you can see, this is actually a paper one, cardboard. It's a thick cardboard. You can't see that, but I know it is. But some of them were also money. So here you go with some coins. Here's another example of coin. 5 mils. Here's another 5 mil. So if you think of a penny and how much a penny is worth, it takes 10 of these 1 mil coins just to make a penny. So you could have a whole lot of mills in your pocket and not very much money at all. So obviously they have stopped producing mills. And I don't know if they were actually used as currency when they were produced. That's a good question. I just thought of to myself. So how does this kind of work? Well, let's assume we're in a hypothetical district that our ad valorem, total ad valorem is $10 million. Okay? We're going to have a growth rate of 5% per year. So our property taxes, or our property in our district, is going to appreciate 5% each year. We're going to pass a bond issue for 4%. And so in order to figure the interest on this, we'll need to multiply the principal times the rate times the time. And so, like I said, we're going to do this over a 3-year period for $250,000. So our principal times our interest rate times our time. So the total amount of money that a district will need in property taxes for the bond issue would be $250,000 plus 3 years of interest. So we said interest was principal times the rate times the year. So we have $250,000 times 0.04, 4% interest times 3 years, or $30,000. And so therefore, we need to raise $250,000 to pay for our bond, plus $30,000 to pay for that interest over 3 years, for a total of $280,000. Okay? So we need to raise $280,000. And when I say we need to raise, that means we need to increase taxes so that we can pay $280,000 back. So how do we do that? Well, it's simple, kind of. The $280,000 is collected over the life of the bond issue. In our case, it's 3 years. So if we divide 280,000 by 3, that tells us we need to collect $93,333.33 each year. And what that means is we're going to get $10,000 in interest and $83,333.33 in principal each year. Okay? So how do we collect the $93,333.33 from our property taxes? Well, we're going to have to increase property taxes. So how do we go about doing that? And this is where you as a principal really could come into this role. Obviously, we've stated before that this course is geared a lot towards superintendents, but as principal, this is probably one of the bigger pieces when it comes to bond issues, because the patrons in your school are going to come to you and talk about the bond issue, not necessarily the superintendent. So when they say, how is this going to affect me? This is how you can work with them. Okay. So what we do is we take our $93,333.33 and divide it by our total net valuation. Okay, the total net valuation of $10 million, which equals 0.00933. Now remember, a mil is 1/1000th of a dollar. So we can multiply that times 1,000. We come up with 9.33 mils. Okay, so this is important. You're going to be doing this as you go. You take the total for each year, divide it by the net valuation of $10 million, and that tells you how many mils you need for that year. Now, this is our first year, but we said we had a 5% appreciation in our property taxes each year, in our property valuation. So the second year, our district is actually worth $10.5 million. We still need to collect the $93,333.30, but when we divide it by the 10.5, and I got an extra zero in there, I realize that, 10.5 million, it actually comes out to 0.00889 or 8.89 mils. So it actually goes down a little bit the second year. Okay. And then the third year, because our property valuation went up again, we're going to see that it's going to go down just slightly, a little bit more that third year to 8.47 mils. Okay, so we went 9.33 mils in year 1, 8.89 mils in year 2, and 8.47 mils in year 3. So what does that mean for the homeowner? Okay, because these are the people who are paying the taxes. So here's what that means for the homeowner. And just to make this simple, I like to use nice big round numbers. So let's say that you have a house worth $100,000. Okay, your $100,000 home, we're going to take 11% of that for property taxes. Okay, that's the assessed value of your home. It's $100,000. For the purpose of property taxes, we're going to take 11% of that. That's the way it works. Okay, so it comes out that your property is taxable at $11,000. Now, if you qualify for a homestead exemption, and we're going to say that you do here, you take $1,000 off of that, and therefore your final property valuation for the purpose of taxes here is $10,000. Okay, so now remember what we said. We said that first year we had to collect 9.33 mils from each property owner. Well, now property owner A here has a home that for the purposes of taxes is worth $10,000. We're going to multiply that $10,000 times the 9.33 mils, or 0.00933, and that property owner is going to pay an additional $93.30 each year. Or if we wanted to divide it by months, we could tell them that they will pay $7.78 a month to fund this bond issue. Okay. The second year, their property, or the mills, we said, went down. So the same homeowner, the second year is only going to pay $88.90 or 71 or $7.41 a month. And then the third year it goes down a little bit more to where property owner pays $84.70 for the year or $7.06 per month. Okay, and so how this works is, as this money is collected um, every year through property taxes, we said that it's put into a sinking fund. So that first year we're going to collect $93,333.33, and $10,000 of that's going to go to pay interest. We said that you pay interest every 6 months. So 6 months after the bonds are sold, we cut our first check for $5,000 out of that sinking fund to pay the institution that will turn around and distribute it as interest out to the bondholders. At the end of the year, we'll pay the second half of that interest, or another $5,000, and that will go out. So at the end of year one, we have $83,333.33 principal in the sinking fund, and we have paid out $10,000 in interest in the sinking fund. Okay, and so this goes on for 3 years, and then at the end of that 3 years, when we pay out that last $5,000 in interest, we're also going to pay off the $250,000 of bonds that we had, and we're going to send all that to the bank, $255,000. Then the bank will issue the bondholders their interest and turn around and let them cash in those bonds for their $5,000 back. Okay, and that's the simple way of how bonds work. And so with that, we're going to do a simulation, of course. So what that means is, let's get out of this. What that means is we are going to do this. So let's start with our instructions up here. We'll make this smaller here, okay? All right, so our instructions or our directions say the project has multiple answers. The goal is to identify how school bonds work and how they impact taxpayers. You will create 2 answer sheets for this project. One using data from Carrollton Public Schools, and I've given you that data here so you don't need to look it up. And the other using data from Devon Crossing, should be Devon Crossing Public Schools, and I've given you that data. The data you're using is the net valuation, okay? So Carrollton has a net valuation of $62,700,540. The bonding capacity then for Carrollton in year one is going to be 10% of that, or $6.2 million. Devon Crossing, on the other hand, is a very wealthy district, has a bonding capacity of $289 million. So year one, or that's their net valuation, year one, they're going to have a bonding capacity of $28.9 million, basically $29 million. So there are some assumptions that we're going to make here to do this. You have a steady growth of 4% every year for 10 years. I showed you how to figure that in the PowerPoint. You have an interest rate of 3%. Told you the interest rate is not great. 3% is pretty good. All bonds are going to pass that you create, so don't worry about that. And then all charges for the bonding company and other fees are included in the bond issue, so you don't have to worry about that. So these bond issues are going to create everything, pay for everything you need, okay? So there's nothing to come in and say, how are we going to do this, and blah, blah, blah. We're making it simple here, but you're going to get an idea. So here are the things that you're going to do. You're going to do this for each district, okay? So you can do it for one and then the other, or do number one for both districts and then number two. However you want to do it, I don't care. You're going to do the same for each district, okay? And I can tell you it's going to be easier in Devon Crossing because the bonding capacity there is almost $29 million, as we said. The bonding capacity in Carrollton is only $6 million. So it's a little over $6 million. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to work it there. Okay, but I still want you to work each of these out and tell me how it's going to impact people. So here you go. These are the 5 things you need to pass bonds for. Okay, you're going to create a chart that shows how you're going to pass these bonds. I'm going to show you an example of one that we used with other data, not this data, other data. So the first thing you do is you have to pass 2 different transportation bonds for $250,000 each. Okay. Now remember, transportation bonds can be a max of 5 years. So you can do 3, 4, 5 years, but you need to pass 2 of them. And earlier I stated that you want to set it up so that initially, when you pass a bond issue, it's going to increase those property taxes. Okay, that district I talked about earlier that failed a bond issue 5 years ago by 1 vote. If they had passed the bond issue then, and it was coming up for a vote now, so if they had passed it 5 years ago in 2011, it would have raised property taxes. So the idea of what you really want to do, and this is geared obviously towards superintendents, is you want to bring the bond issues in as one expires, put another one on, okay? So that you're actually not going to raise property taxes, you're just going to keep them the same. So if you, in our PowerPoint, we did a $250,000 bond issue for 3 years, and you can see how it raised it each of those 3 years. In theory, what we would want to do for year 4, we would want to start a second $250,000 bond issue. And that would keep taxes up so that we wouldn't have to go and try to convince patrons that them raising their taxes is a good thing. Okay, so that's why you want to keep them coming one after the other, not let them expire. If you can do that at all, because the second time it comes around, you're going to tell your patrons that it's actually keeping taxes the same. And I bring that up now because it's really an ethical thing. And I've seen this here in the Tulsa area where one school district stated that passing this next round of bond issues would not increase their taxes. Which in theory is true, it doesn't increase their taxes, but they left it at that. The second school district actually told the patrons that by not passing the bond issue, their taxes would decrease, but that when it came time that they had to pass it in the future to support the school, they would turn around and re-increase their taxes. And so it was a little bit more ethical in the idea of the second school district and how they did it. Okay, so anyway, that's just a piece of free advice there, I guess. So however you organize these is up to you. So here are the things you need to do. Number 1, pass 2 different transportation bonds for $250,000 each. Again, make them 3, 4, 5 years. The big thing here, a couple of big things. You're going to renovate an old building for the high school that will become 10 additional classrooms. This will cost the district $5 million. Okay, so you're going to have to pass bonds to equal to $5 million. You're going to have to pass a classroom addition at the elementary bond that will cost $1.5 million and increase capacity at elementary by 2 classrooms and a computer lab. You're going to need to renovate the football stadium that will cost $400,000. And if you've ever looked at renovations on track and field stuff like football stadiums or track, literally track and field stuff, is unbelievably expensive. And then finally, you're going to pass a technology bond issue for $700,000 to take the school into a one-to-one atmosphere. This $700,000 is going to pay for infrastructure upgrades and all the necessary training in addition to the actual technology that you're going to purchase. Okay, so your transportation bonds can go up to 5 years. Your building bonds, numbers 2 and 3, can go up to 25 years if you wanted them to. But we're only using a 10-year time frame, so your theoretical max is 10 years. The football stadium is actually would be a building thing, so that would fall into that 10-year thing. The technology bond, we're going to assume the life of technology is 5 years, so we're going to make that 5 years as well for a max there. So what you're going to do then is create 2 separate charts to show how you're going to schedule these bond issues. These are the things you're going to include in the charts. Okay. The total ad valorem value. Let me see if I can bring up one now and just show you here. So let me pull this up here. So here's some theoretical data that we use for another class, but you get the idea here, okay? So in this example, so the total ad valorem, the total bonding capacity, the amount needed for the bonds by each individual bond, the amount of money needed for interest by the bond, how many mills are required for the sinking fund, and the cost to a homeowner with the $100,000 home on a yearly and monthly basis like we talked about. Okay, and so in this example here, you can see that here I have a 3-year bus bond, $250,000. So that means that for these 3 years, I'm going to subtract $250,000 out of my bonding capacity. So what we're showing here then is for this first year, I'm passing 2 bonds. I'm passing a bus bond for $250,000, and in this theoretical building project, I have 2 phases, and I'm doing it over a 10-year period, and I'm passing 2 $750,000 bond issues, one for 5 years and the second for 5 years. So what this means is that for year 1, I have $250,000 and $750,000 for a total of $1 million out in bonds. My bonding capacity for year 1, this is my theoretical valuation of $14,098,000 for my district. You're going to input your numbers here for Carrollton and Devon. My bonding capacity, therefore, is 10% of this, or $1.4 million. So what I've done here is I've spent $1 million of that for each of these 3 years. Okay. So then I go down here, and in year 4, I just rerun this same bond for a second group of buses, and then in year 7, rerun it again for a third group of buses. When this first $750,000 runs out after 5 years, I turn around and run it again for another 5 years. And then during the 10th year, I have a $250,000 renovation on a stadium here. So each year, my total bonds out was actually $1 million. This is nice, easy, round numbers. And you can see that my valuation increased each year, as did my bonding capacity. But even so, I finagled this so that I only had a total of $1 million out. So in my bonds, my bus bond, each of them cost me $250,000 plus 3% interest. This was 3%, I believe. My interest each year was $22,500, or my total interest was $22,500. My interest for each year was $7,500. Okay. For my stadium, the one-time $250,000, the interest was $7,500. It was interest $7,500 because it was done only 1 year. My 2 phases in the renovation of the building, $750,000 each. My interest was $112,500. For each year, it needed to be $22,500. Okay. So what I did on this next chart then is I showed the interest on each bond that was going to be paid each year for a total of $30,000 each year. I had to come up with $30,000 each year on this. And so what I did then is, in this next chart, total to be collected, so you can see where I'm collecting the interest. Is actually a little bit wrong here because I'm not collecting the whole $250,000 each year, but you can see here the goal is that I'm collecting the interest. Millage rate for the home, so I went through and I did the mills for the bus bond issue. That first year the millage rate was 1.83 mills, or 0.00183. For the building construction, it was 5.48, or 0.00548. And simply what I did for our person who had the $100,000 home, that person paid $730.55 a year to fund those, or $60.88 a month. And we can change this, and you can see how these changed as they went down. But this just to show you, so what you would do then as somebody trying to help a stakeholder is you could adjust the home price. So this is based on a home for $100,000. If the home price was $200,000 or $250,000, then notice what my stuff changed. Now I changed all this, okay? All this stuff is based on the input assessed value of the home. Actually, a $250,000 home would be assessed at $25,000. So a person in a $250,000 home, this is how much he or she would have to pay. A person in a $500,000 home, a net valuation, 10%. This is that 10% piece. You can see how it goes up. Okay. The person in the $1 million home, so they're 10% of that is going to be $100,000. So you can see then that this person is paying $608 a month extra in property taxes. Of course, they have a $1 million home, so $608 a month is probably not too much. So a while ago I typed in an extra zero. So let's say we have somebody who actually has a $2.5 million home. So 10% of that would be $250,000, and their cost of the bond issue on that would be $1,520 for that first year, or $1,520 a month for that first year. Or in other words, they're going to pay $18,000 basically to the school to build these things. Now, of course, this one home, you know, I'm just being theoretical here. Our whole net district valuation is only $14.98 million. So somebody who has a $2.5 million home has 1/6 of our total net valuation in the district. So that means most people would only have a home maybe worth $25,000, and in that case, 10% of that would be $2,500. And here's how their property taxes would change. Okay, so this is reality out in many places. But in Devon Crossing, you might have that $2.5 million home. So those people are really going to pay quite a bit. So anyway, you're going to create a chart very similar to this and do one for each of the school districts. Okay. And I will add this into Blackboard for you so that you can see that. So you can see I've included all 6 of these things here in this chart. Okay. And Devon Crossing is going to be a little bit easier because they have a large tax base. Carrollton may be a little bit difficult, and so if you have to, then you're going to have to make choices as to what you want in the district. These 5 things are not prioritized. Okay, so decide how you want to spend the money. If you can't spend it all, where are you going to cut? And then you can make that decision on an individual basis. But do as much as you can and explain why you can't do the rest. Okay, and then finally, you're going to create a presentation. This is a short PowerPoint presentation that's basically going to take this kind of stuff, and I would use the $100,000 home, so the $10,000 price here, and explain to patrons what you're wanting to do. So you're going to say the things that you do, okay, all 5 or however many you get to do, and then you're going to explain to them briefly in layman's terms what you're going to do and how much it's going to cost them for year and for each month. Okay, so you can do these 6 items you need to do for each district. Your presentation you can do just for one district. You don't have to do that for both. Just make one presentation. Just tell me which one you're doing so I'll know which one you do, because I think it's going to take some creativity to get all, if at all possible, things in Carrollton School District. So that is your assignment. You have 3 weeks to work on that. I will be checking in with you each week as we go, so please feel free to text me, email me, or call me if you have any questions. Okay?